I have not.
Welcome to the Atlanta Quilt Festival. We are so glad that you have decided to join us today, and we know you are going to enjoy the lecture that we have planned for you, and you're going to learn information nobody else has, which is what we like to do at the Atlanta Quilt Festival, is be on the cutting edge of everything. Just a little bit of history about the Marva Swanson Lecture Series. Most of you know that we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We're governed by a board of directors, and I, along with two other women, are the co-founders of the Atlanta Quilt Festival. And unfortunately, our dear friend Marva Swanson has passed away, and Peggy, who you will meet shortly, came up with the idea of having a lecture series named in her honor to preserve her memory and to remind people she was always all about education. We have always had a full lineup of classes, and you notice that we have two classes going on today. I'm sure they are not happy that we scheduled this in such a way that they can't be in this room. Unfortunately, we have limited space, but we have a t-shirt class going on in the first room when you walked in, so they're learning to do that. And even more importantly, we have our beginning quilting class going on across the hall, and that is definitely part of our mission statement. We are dedicated to the preservation of quilting and African American quilting in general, and we have a beginning quilting class every year. The other classes change, but we have beginning quilting and youth beginning quilting for teenagers every year. So take a look at your program, and you can see everything that we have, the classes we have remaining for the rest of the month and until September 6th. Now, we already have our dates for 2026. So when you leave here, I want you to look at your calendar. First Sunday in August 2026, plan to be with us again right here at the Southwest Art Center. One other thing I want to mention to you that is special this year is we are selling our newly published book, Good Trouble Quilts. We had a beautiful book launch last Friday. We were so honored to have Congressman Lewis's only son, John Miles Lewis, join us to receive a special quilt presentation. We had heard through a little birdie that he had a favorite quilt of all the quilts in the book, and that quilter, Melinda Rushing, was willing to donate her quilt to him. We had no idea he would come to receive it, but he did, and he made remarks, and it was just really, really a special evening. Hope you came on opening day. The most special part of opening day are the vendors. It's the only day we really have all the art vendors and fabric vendors and jewelry and all of that, so that was wonderful. But for the quilters, the most special part is the ribbon ceremony. So we had our ribbon ceremony. You can see the ribbons on the quilts when you go through the exhibit, or you can go to our website and see who the winners are. The final thing I want to recommend, or insist even, that you do is vote for Best of Show. The ballots are up front. One of the fun things we do is have our viewers vote for their top 3 quilts. And at the end of the month, we tally the ballots, and one quilt is crowned Best of Show. So that's always very, very fun. Okay, so we are very, very happy that you're here. I know that you could have been anywhere in the world. I know we are people with options, and you could have been anywhere in the world you wanted to be, but you chose to be here with us and our special guest, Mr. Pettaway. So with that, I'm going to ask Peggy to come up, and she's going to introduce our special guest. Let's give Peggy a hand.
Well, thank you, OB. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure, and I've already told Mr. Pettaway, he just feels like family. We had the opportunity to meet a couple years ago, and so it's so good to have him back with us again. He wasn't in this venue, but we had him at another venue. So, Mr. Willie J. Pettaway Jr., he will share firsthand information on what it's like to grow up in Gee's Bend. We know Gee's Bend is a small community that has made national and international impact on the quilting world. He is the son of the late Lola and Willie Pettaway. Lola's quilts are in museums, and she was known for her meticulous quilting. Willie grew up on a farm in Gee's Bend, assisting his mother, Lola, his grandmother, Allie, and Nellie Parker Pettaway. I'm assuming maybe that was an aunt.
That's my grandmother on my
the
dad's
other
side.
grandmother.
Yes,
Okay.
the other grandmother.
Yeah.
The other grandmother,
So
for real.
he helped them by prepping materials as well as assisting with the adjusting of the quilting support apparatuses that were as needed. So we're going to enjoy getting this firsthand information. And I love it, you know, my mother used to say this, the Gee's Bend people knew how to make a way out of no way. I mean, that's what we had to do. And, but thanks to them and thanks to their inspiring work and their resilience, it just made us better people. So Willie served 20 years in the military, and he retired in 2020 with honorable discharge. And he's moved on to do some other things, and that might be part of his presentation as well. But at this time, if you would please come up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before
Before I start, huh?
Yeah, come on up. I just want you to know that y'all are special that you're hearing this firsthand, but we do have a videographer who is going to record the lecture, and we hope to have the lecture on our YouTube channel soon, so you can share that with your friends. And after his lecture, we will have a short reception, and I'm sure he will be very happy to take a lot of selfies with you and the quilt. See, I put him in the situation where he can't say no. So, yes. All right, thank you.
On that note, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Willie Pettaway, just like she said. I like to move around a little bit, kind of figure out who's in the room. But first and foremost, giving grace and honor to God, you know, for guiding my steps, keeping me safe when harm was always there. And I thank the Brown Sugar Association for inviting me here. Nothing happened without a reason.
I'm sorry, Willie.
Or
everybody gets it mixed up. This is Willie Atlanta Quilt Festival.
the Atlantic Quilt
You know,
Festival.
Brown
I stand corrected. Good soldier. So, good soldier, I stand corrected. The Atlantic Quilt Festival Association. Thank you, and thank you. That's a really good start, huh? But anyways, you know, I like to have fun. So you guys relax a little bit. Don't be uptight. You know, if you want to ask me a question, as long as it's appropriate, I'll answer it to the best of my ability. And so before I talk about a quilt, man, I guess we need to talk about Gee's Bend, huh? So that slide right there is a representation of actually one of the homes that I lived in. If you look over to the my far right, your left, where you see the descendant from the slave owners from Wilcox County, Gee's Bend, Alabama. But actually, a little bit of the history about Gee's Bend, you know, people said we lived in primitive conditions, and they were exactly right. However, there are two places in Gee's Bend. The other place that you don't hear about, I'm going to talk about later. So I'm going to leave that cliffhanger out there. So if I forget to talk about it, somebody remind me, right? So then, next slide. So first and foremost, you always hear the story about G's Bend. So what I'm gonna do for you today, I'm gonna give you a direct link to the slave owner and the descendants. The picture that you see me on, I'm standing directly in front of a landmark in G's Bend as we speak right now, and it's the daughter, Morena Pettaway. It is the daughter of Mark Pettaway. So before I talk about Mark, you know, Mark actually took over the plantation from Joseph G's. Joseph G's got word that for some strange reason at a horseshoe bend in the Alabama River in a little small place called G's Bend at the time, that the land was real fertile, part of the Black Belt, and it was real good for producing cotton. So he decided that he would move there from Halifax County, North Carolina, and decided to purchase roughly about 6,000 acres of land. It's all on the slides. I probably won't go exactly by it, but I'm sure you guys are avid readers. So then, on top of that, he brought with him approximately 47 slaves. And the story goes that all the slaves actually walked from Halifax County, North Carolina, all the way to Alabama. Stop for a minute. I want that to resonate. Think about walking from North Carolina to Alabama. It take you how long in a car? So, and the only person that could ride at the time was the master cook. That's the story that I was told. So once they got to Alabama, he decided that once he purchased the land, G's Bend, that's when it actually became a plantation. The whole time I grew up there, I had no idea that G's Bend was a plantation. Because I was used to Borgen. So when you said G's Bend, I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, I literally said that. I'm like, G's Bend? I mean, I live in Borgen. But if you put it in your GPS, if you put G's Bend there, it'll take you to Borgen. If you put Borgen there, it'll take you to G's Bend. How about that? It's all good. So then what happened is, you know, Joseph got into some stuff, had a little trouble financially. He never got married the whole time he was there, so I'm not gonna say what he was doing. However, I got green eyes, so, you know, figure that out. But anyways, you know, we're gonna keep it real, right? So then, I'm not saying anything, but I'm saying some stuff, right? So then, right around, you know, 1845, you know, his nephew, Mark, you know, because he once he died, the land went to his relative. Mark Pettaway was a sheriff in Halifax County, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. And so he moved down there with his relative. And so this tombstone right here is actually where Morena is buried at. This is her tombstone, and it's located in a place called Sandy Hill, G's Bend. So then, Wilcox County, once Mark passed away, he left the land to the slaves that were still there. You know, they were actually enslaved. And once he left the land there, they were actually tenant slaves. So that means that they were still tenanting the land, but it was based off of rent. So growing cotton in G's Bend was never as profitable as Joseph G's thought. It just didn't work out. I'm a cotton picker, so I know. You know, firsthand, my mother and I, we spent a lot of time in the cotton field. And ergo, I'm gonna talk about the quilts in a little bit, because that's what you guys are waiting on, right? So then, right around 1895 is when everything started to turn a little bit. And I'm not gonna give you the whole history of G's Bend. So the Van de Graaff, really good people. He was an attorney, so he bought the land himself, he purchased it. And the thing about it is, he lived in Tuscaloosa, so he never really operated the plantation. One of his relatives did that for him. And we always used to see the Van de Graaff. Growing up in G's Bend, I'm like, well, there go those Van de Graaff, there go those Van de Graaff. So when I was growing up, I never had any idea how important he was to that community, because he was so nice that he purchased it. And eventually, during the Roosevelt era, you know, the government stepped in. So I'm gonna skip over a whole bunch of stuff, right? The government stepped in, they bought all the land, and that's how my grandfather, the rest of his brothers and sisters, got the land that they have right now, and they sold it pretty cheap. You know, my grandfather bought over 100 some odd acres of land for under $50,000. Yeah, we still got it. Yeah, it's you know, we got a house on it. Him and his brother had a whole sector. If you was in the back of my house. His brother Ed lived there. Right up the street from Ed, his brother Paul lived there. Right across the street from Paul, his brother Burden lived there. Right across from Burden, his brother Israel, who was my grandfather, who I actually look like. You know, so I don't look like Joseph G's. Just in case you guys were thinking, right? So then, that is exactly how things happen. So, and if you go up the street a little bit, my Uncle Stampo, they all had O's in their name. My great-grandfather's name was Ottaway Pettaway. So Ottaway Pettaway decided that if you look up some Pettaways, you'll see an O in the middle, all of my grandfather's or my great-uncle's name. Ottaway Pettaway say, well, what I'm gonna do is make sure all of my sons carry my middle name. So the additional O is Israel O, Burden O, Ed O. Kind of like Forrest Gump, huh? Before Forrest Gump. But anyway, that's enough about the history of G's Bend. So that's exactly what G's Bend. So if you want to, when you hear the story about Mark Pettaway owning a plantation in G's Bend, and if you want to know for sure that Mark Pettaway was actually there in the 1800s, man, they made some good concrete. It's still standing. I took this picture about a year ago. I'm like, holy, you know what? You know, because now you pour some concrete, cracks straight away before they even leave. But, you know, enough about that. Next slide, please. So this is what G's Bend looked like. And remember I was talking about, this is where Borkin sat, and this is actually where G's Bend sat. And the different places around there, people lived in Hotel, Brown, Quarter, and everybody down there was pretty much related. And it was a community that thrived. And a nugget for me was that my grandmother was 96 years old. And I used to talk to her on a regular basis. I spent a lot of time with her because of the quilts sometimes, just because I visit and I like the way she cooked. So then, you know, on top of that, I don't remember anyone ever being killed by another person in that community. And my grandmother told, and I left there when I was 17, 18 years old. And to the day, I think probably maybe 2 people or 3, and they were by accident. And it was a community. G's Bend, it's always a community. Just like Peggy was saying, we made a way, I don't know, no one was homeless, no one went hungry, the doors was not locked, everybody was family. You can walk into anybody's house and they just say, how you doing? And next slide. So you guys want to hear about quilts. So then, I could tell, right? It was like, when you gonna get to the quilt? Like, it's a song, you know, when you gonna get to the good part. So back in the 60s, so I jumped, right? But let me tell you what happened in 49. So then that way, I don't forget my cliffhanger, right? But what's the cliffhanger? The cliffhanger was what? Oh man, you guys.
The other location.
The other location?
Yeah.
So,
The bridge.
the bridge?
Yeah.
The bridge between the two. You're actually right. Anyway, the cliffhanger was that Borgin and G's Bend is the same place. So in 1949, Senator Borgin from Mobile came to Wilcox County before the civil rights stuff really was kicked off. So Borgin decided that we needed a post office because everything was dirt road. We were so isolated from the rest of the world that, you know, we couldn't get mail, couldn't get all that other stuff for my grandfather and them. They couldn't get it. I was young, I got mail. Anyway, kind of like AOL, you got mail. So then, and so that's how I became Borgin. Senator Borgin put a post office there. They decided to name G's Bend after Senator Borgin from Mobile, Alabama. So then, in 1960, Dr. Martin Luther King visited the community, and the members there became members of the civil rights movement. That was actually a trying time for G's Bend, because I'm actually one of those kids that was part of the segregation for the schools down there, and I won't get into a lot of that. So then once he got there, you know, the Freedom Quilting Beating was actually established in '72 as a co-op. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk in front of my slide. If I was instructing in the Army, they would ding me for that. So when I'm talking about this quilt here, when I talk about some of the fabric, at the Quilting Bee, when they established the Quilting Bee, which was a co-op, so it could provide some economic relief for the ladies there. My grandmother worked there. Most of the ladies in the community worked there, and they had a contract with Sears and Roebuck. And under Sears and Roebuck provided them with material, and the material that they provided is some of this same material right here that you're looking at. And by the way, this is a crochet quilt, and it's actually an 18-patch quilt with a center medallion. So and it's part of a housetop, and I'm going to talk about the housetop and why it was so, my mother's favorite. I swear, I'll just leave that alone. Anyway, so then you had the browns, you had the red, you had the orange, and you had the avocado green. And when you see a corduroy quilt made out of those colors from G's Bend, you know that you have one of the old quilts with the old fabric, all right? And it was always corduroy. But my mother switched up a little bit here. This is not corduroy, but this is her center medallion. So, she was real creative. And when I looked at this, what I was thinking about when she actually made this quilt was that, she probably ran out of the sacking material, because sometimes what the ladies would do is we had those feed sacks because we had a farm. So on the farm, those sacks had this long, nice, tough thread. Sometimes we used to go fishing with it, and you pull it out, and they would roll it up, and later on they would take a big needle, and if you saw one of the G's Bend quilt with long stitches, chances are it was from some of those sacking. So when you hear me talk about my great-grandmother's quilt, Henrietta, and if her stitches was long, it was probably some of the thread that came out of one of those feed sacks. It had one of those griffins on it. So if you ever see a quilt with one of those burlap type sack, but actually with that griffin on it, white cloth, you might want to keep that one. It's old. All right. So next slide, please. Well, so at the bottom of the slide, you probably already read ahead, right? So what happened is in early 2000s, actually early 90s, but before I talk about that, I already talked about the patchwork tradition. And the patchwork tradition is among the most sought after and the most extraordinary styles of quilting. And they're in museums all over the world. They're in museums in New York, Houston, my mother's work is there, Minneapolis, Pennsylvania, just to name a few. So then, they're amongst the modern world for as quilting. These ladies never thought sitting out there on the porch underneath what we call a horse, just quilting away, chilling out. You guys thought I was going to read a bunch of PowerPoint slides to you, huh? Yeah. All right, so then next slide, because you've already read them, right? These are the three ladies that I'm going to talk about the most. This is actually my great-grandmother. Her name is Henrietta. I used to go to her house on a regular basis. She lived in a place, remember that little map I showed you? How many people saw a place called Hotel? Wasn't paying attention. She did. She's pretty smart. All right, so this is Henrietta. This is my grandmother, Ollie. This is my sweet mother, Lola. So Henrietta changed the game when it came to the housetop quilt. She created various variations of it. And some of her work is in a museum right now as we speak. To this day, one of her quilts is still there. And she liked to use the denim. Well, I got it in the slide. You'll see it later. So if I forget, let me know you saw it, right? So then, Henrietta is actually my grandmother's mother-in-law. So this is my grandfather, John's mother. So when Henrietta was quilting, she would be out on the porch. She had this long apron. You know how she wasn't exactly Aunt Mama, but you know how there's certain thing, Aunt Mama, for some reason they always wore this long, you're not an apron, you're not cooking. But she was cooking because she was quilting. So when she sat in front of the quilt, she was actually mixing and cooking, right? But she was just making them. I'm like, she wore it all the time. But I was too afraid to ask her why, And she's actually part Jamaican. And then she actually helped my grandmother when she was stuck on a certain pattern, trying to figure some stuff out. Henrietta, she would come over there and give her some guidance because the tradition was passed down from her to her daughter-in-law, Ollie, and Ollie taught my mother, Lola, how to make quilts, and they did it meticulously. Next slide. So then, I think I just talked about that, right? All right, so then this is the quilt that I was talking about. You can see the different fabrics, and that's a variation of a housetop quilt, and that's one of my great-grandmother's specialty. She had a knack for just doing her own thing. She incorporated things and colors and fabric the way she wanted. All right, next slide. That pastel down at the bottom, man, that's serious colors, huh? This is another one of her quilts, and the latest there, I'm still trying to figure out what is a pig pole in a pen. Yeah, pig pole in a pen. All right, so a pig pole in the pen, so these are squares here, right? So I saw some that where it says you had a block here, you got a block here, got a block here, a block here, and you got a whole bunch of little patches in the center, right? And supposedly, according to the latest there, it just really depends on what they felt like. That's what they named it like. So they would call it because everybody was surrounded. And if you talk to the Bendoffs, you know, Mary Bendoff used to make them all the time. And Reuben, her son, I used to play with him. He would say he would have to go out into the barn, have to pick stuff up, and he was always out in the pig pen. She named the quilt after. That's what he told me. I'm not sure. She called it a pig in the pen, but those are some of the dimensions of it, you know, and it was taken by Pinkerton. And her quilts was actually bought by So Grown Deep, and it was donated as a gift. All right, so everybody good? Along with it? All right, next slide. We're gonna get through this. All right, so then, if you look at quilts, if you look at that quilt in the back, if you look at that quilt in the back, look at that quilt in the back, the one over in the sides. So you never seen one of G's being, I've never seen one of G's being quilts back in the day that was made in the 70s that was symmetrical. Just like you can go to Walmart, you go to the store and you can buy a quilt and it's 76 by whatever, or 105 by 110 if you got a king size. We didn't have them. We had what we call a tick sack. So a tick mattress is basically the same, if you ever watched those shows where you was deep in the woods, deep in the backwoods in Africa, those log cabins and stuff, you never really seen a real mattress. All you saw was something like a pillow on a bed. So a tick mattress is similar to that, and it always had the least desirable material in it. So they call it corn husk, we call it corn chuck. All right, so then the way it worked is the centerpiece right here, it would come down to about here, and it goes to here. So then what happened is, if you was lucky, you can get some good corn chuck, because we lived on a farm, we had hogs, cows, and pigs, so we couldn't throw away the residue from the corn after we finished. We kept the husk, so once we kept the husk, we would pack the husk on the inside of something like, looking like a pillow, so you guys can have a better example. And so that's what we would sleep on. So when my mother, or my mother would start quilting, she would put the top together, put the pieces together, whatever kind of quilt she was gonna make, and then she would say, okay, go put this on the mattress. It was a tick mattress. So the tick mattress is kind of like a pillow, so it's never gonna be real even. It's never gonna have a width 25 by 30 by whatever. It was just gonna be however the tick laid, and however, you know. But the bad part about it, it was like 3 of us in that bed. So if you fell in the middle of it, and if you lost some cover because your brothers pulled it off of you, if you wake up in the morning doing this, you know that you got all the corn chuck and you was itching for the rest of the day. But you got a good night's sleep. Anyway, you know, and then if they had a problem with holding that water, it was really a long night. I didn't say anything. You guys have got dirty minds. So then what happens is, you say, hey, just hug your brother, man. You know, it's going to be all right. You know, we're going to get you through this. And, you know, we get up the next morning, take a bath or whatever. Well, we had a little tub. We didn't have a bathtub. We had those gallon tubs that everybody get in one at a time. Hopefully you wouldn't last, because by then the water's brown. All right. So anyway, that's a tick mattress. So next slide, please. I hope you guys are learning something about G's band, huh? So this is my beautiful grandmother, Ollie. So Ollie was a skilled quilter from G's Bend. You know, she first learned from my mother, like I told you earlier. I mean, my mind worked a little different. Sometimes I think I might have had ADD, that's why they worked me so much. No, she fashioned her quilts out of old dresses, out of old shirt tails, whatever was around, that's what she made her quilts out of. And if you look in the back right there, that is one of hers right there. That's one of the last one that she made. She passed away in 2010. And I got lucky enough to just have one of her quilts. And, you know, that's special to me. And it's beautiful. You know, if you look at the colors, if you look at the fabrics, if you look at the way she did it, and it's all based off her, what her mother-in-law taught her. It's the love. Those quilts were made out of love. I have a T-shirt. When you see a house top made by Lola, made by Ollie, that is a quilt made straight out of love. And next slide, please, before I start crying. Yeah, I don't want to see that. So this is another one of her quilts. And, you know, again, constructed using blends of polyester, cotton, and corduroys. Because remember, corduroys was available because of the quilting bee, because of economic insecurities that we had. And, you know, the ladies managed the quilting bee. And I remember Mary McCarthy, she moved down there with the quilting bee. And she managed it for a while. And eventually, the ladies in the community took over it. And the quilting bee closed down for a while. And during the civil rights movement, I didn't want to go too deep earlier. So what happened was G's Bend was isolated from the rest of Wilcox County. So we had a ferry there. My dad worked on it. My great uncle worked on it. So they decided when they were trying to register people to vote, is they would close the ferry. And once they closed that ferry, they cut all access to G's Bend to get to Camden, Alabama. And so eventually, you know, the ferry's now back open thanks to, you know, some work that was done by some people that figured that they can pay some restitution back to G's Bend. And the difference is, if you catch the ferry from G's Bend to Camden, you can get there in probably 15 minutes. But if you had to ride, it's about an hour ride. And just imagine, growing up back then, we had dirt road before we got, you know, paved roads there. So it was a pretty nasty ride. All right, next slide. We're gonna get through this. All right, so again, that's some of my grandmother's quilt right there. Again, the same material. And these dimensions are pretty close, right? You see that bow right there? That quilt is crooked, so it's not exactly that, but it's close enough. I measured it myself. Anyway, next slide. And this is the famous pinwheel block variation. This was from my dad's mother, Nellie Parker, that we was talking about earlier. And she used to sit on the porch quite often. She was kind of a quiet lady, and she quilted all day when she was feeling like it, you know, and doing other things. Growing up on a farm, you always have something. Look at this. This is amazing, man. Just think about that. You know, you're just sitting there. I'm gonna make this, and what I'm gonna make it, and the reason that I'm gonna make it is not necessarily that I'm an artist. It's not because it's abstract art. I'm gonna make this because it's straight out of necessity, and I need to make sure my babies are warm. So when those ladies down there made quilts, my mother and all, it was about making sure my babies were warm. And if you met my mother, the first thing she would say is, "My name is Lola Pettaway. When all God get together, all God little children get together, what a time, what a time." And by the way, I got 12 beautiful kids. You would know that quick. And we were all warm. Next slide. She made a quilt for every one of us, and that's her right there. All right, and if you notice, you see that same material that I was talking about. And Lola would tell you that she never really set out to be an artist, although she had quilts that was exhibited in Houston. She had quilts that are in Minneapolis, in the museum, and the Constitution. She had quilts that was just straight up magnificent, if I had to put a word for it. And, you know, unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago. And she quilted all the way up until probably the last year of her life. And, you know, next slide. So, again, she never really set out to be an artist. This is that quilt right there. That is the quilt, and her stuff's been collected by so many different people. And recently, a few weeks ago, it was on display again in Pennsyltown, Albany, New York. I was there for about a week or so, making sure that her legacy stays alive. And part of what I'm doing right now, you know, why I'm doing it. Next slide, getting choked up. Oh yeah, but you know, Lola variation of the housetop quilt again was straight from her great grandmother, from Henrietta and her mom, and you know, that's one of her quilts over there. And again, this is the first time I really paid attention to what's going on here. If you stand way back, you can actually see how this medallion hang. And you can see that if you count all of these squares, it's 18 of them. And all of them have the same fabric except for one. And if you see that from Lola, this is her statement. This is my medallion. This is the housetop that's gonna cover all my babies during the winter. And this is probably one that I never slept on because I was wondering where she get all this yarn from. And what kind of needle she used to get it through, right? You know, and actually it's two-sided. Yeah, see that? Yeah, so if you get tired of one side, one color, you can flip it over. And it's heavy. Yeah, so if you slept on that, if you had ADD or something, if you had anxiety, because it's real heavy, it'll calm you right on down. Go right to sleep. Man, okay, next slide. So then, again, that's another one of her masterpieces. You know, Lola selected corduroy fabric. This is the Sears and Roebuck fabric I was telling you about a little while ago, and that's in a museum somewhere. You know, I'm gonna go out and visit one day. And again, that's why when I started, I wanted you to see this fabric here. So when you hear people talking about the quilting bee, and you hear them talk about economic development in Gee's Bend, Alabama, you think about Sears and Roebuck, and you think about the material that they provided. And also the Red Cross used to drop boxes off down there too. And after we finished using pants, jeans, shirts, or whatever, they were actually material that they used. So they used whatever was available. Next slide. And that is one of those big corduroy quilts. It is actually, Sears thought that they can do a reproduction. And so they made actually when Bill Arnett came down to Gee's Bend in the mid-90s, and he was from Georgia, him and his son Matt, and it was under the Linwood Foundation, and he was looking through a book, and he saw these quilts laying out on a wood pile, so he decided to drive down to Gee's Bend, stop by Milner Colvin house. He used to play with Yancey, that's his mother, so I kind of know everybody there. So he talked to her, interviewed her, and started talking about, quilts. And she explained to him that is what we do. About October every year, you see quilts hanging out on the air, airing out, getting them prepared for the winter because they've been stuffed in boxes during the whole summer. And so when Bill Arnett discovered that, he decided, well, this is art. And he started calling Gee's Bend quilt abstract art. So, but I looked at them as quilts. We looked at them as something to just keep warm with. But when I look at them now, I can kind of see what he was talking about. I can see the real beauty in it, and I can see the connection. But what I see when I look at a quilt is straight love. All right, next slide. And this is Miss Lucy Mingo. Her son is married to my sister. Mark is married to Lola. And Lucy Mingo was part of a crew. It was Ollie, my grandmother. It was Lola. And her nickname, I ain't gonna tell y'all that. And then it was my Aunt Nancy. And let's see who else they would allow to quilt with them. Mary Bendoff, she could come in every once in a while. Her sister Letitia help out once in a while. And so when I said that to say that, this is when my job started. So they would be at my grandmother's house out underneath the pear tree, and we were painting around or whatever. And what they used for support was an A-frame here, 2 long poles here, 1 here, and they would roll the quilts up. Once they figured out the matting, they figured out the top, they figured out the bottom of it, and once they roll it up, so once they quilt to a certain place, they would call one of us over and say, adjust this horse. It's actually the A-frame, so they call it a horse. So we would adjust, and by the way, go in the house, get me a glass of water. By the way, go get that piece of cake or whatever. And, whatever if they needed, as kids, or sometimes if we didn't have processed cotton. I have a quilt in New York. I wish I would have had it here. I would have brought it. That actually have some of the cotton that's unprocessed. So if you see an old quilt with lumps in it, it's by design. That's some of the old cotton. So as a kid, what I would do for my mother, go out and find a nice stick, spread the cotton out, and beat the seeds out of it, because cotton have seeds. Get as many seeds out as you possibly can. And if you was not good at it, if mom still made the quilt, when you put that quilt over you, and if you roll over a certain way, you did ouch. That means a couple of seeds got you, because you didn't beat it out, because you can't get it even. But then if you had processed cotton, once we picked about 500 or 600 pounds and took it to the cotton gin, then they'll process it, and some of the cotton that was real dirty, because the person that owned the cotton gin was kind of, not so straight. And so what they would do is they would like, well, this is dirty, we can't buy this. This is dirty, we can't buy this. So then they would bring it back home and they would use it for quilts, because it wasn't clean enough to be sold as A1 bale of cotton. And so at the end of the year, all the money that was borrowed for farming, they end up in debt. But we made it. All right, next slide. And Miss Loretta, probably one of the smartest women for as quilting goes, and one of the quietest that was in G's Bend. She lived down we call it up the road, and she would just walk down the street, and she would be in her house, she would be making masterpieces, and no one would ever know it, because she rarely associated or socialized with it. Now, if she walked on the hill with my grandmother, she was welcome. She could sit down and she could stitch all day. And so they'd be dropping stitches all day. All right, now if you look over here, see these 3 ladies here? That's my Aunt Nancy. And if I'm not mistaken, that looked like Miss Alonzo Pettaway. Miss Alonzo Pettaway, her mother was a gangster. Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you another little story, right? So then, her name was Danisha, right? So then, Danisha, from what I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but she was one of the last slaves that came into Mobile, Alabama. And then somehow she got to G's Bend. And so when this one year, I don't know, I think it was around the 40s or the 30s or something. So then everybody was farming, doing what they do. So Mark Pettaway done passed away. Or it was actually before then, probably. I don't know the exact date, but the story goes that he passed away. Then someone come through, because everybody, remember they were tenant, so they had a lot of debt every year, because they picked cotton, they sold it, and made no money. And they did it every year. If you heard about the black farmers, that was part of it. In 2014, President Obama decided he was going to help them out. Props off to him. And anyways, to finish the story, Miss Danisha, when they was coming by, they would come by people's houses, and they would actually take the pigs, the chickens, the horses, the cows. They would even go in the kitchen and take the pots and the pans if they thought it was worth something. So then they get to around the corner to Alonzo's house. He lived up the street from us. So when they get there, Miss Danisha is standing in the yard saying, y'all are not going to take my stuff. You're going to have to kill me. So she beat them off, and she ran them off, and they didn't take none of her stuff. Yeah, that's Miss Alonzo. That was her. Yeah, she's good people. All right, next slide. Yeah, she's going to protect her baby. This is Mary Lee Bendoff, and she's a master quilter as well. And if you notice, when I was talking about those horses, you see how they leaning over there? They did that all day long, with ease. Next slide. And currently, this is another generation. You guys, when you go talk about G's Ben Quilts, and you look up some names, you're gonna see Loretta Pettaway Bennett. Loretta Pettaway Bennett is my cousin. You know, she's, we call Uncle Paul, Old Pettaway. Remember I talked about them O's? She lived up the road, part of that little same sector. They had that whole grid covered. And that's her and Miss Maylene sitting down. And the difference is, now you got PVC pipes, and you got a little small table versus those long A-frame and a horse. This is the newer generation, and she quilts and she go over all over the place quite often. She's got some major work out there. Next slide. And that is her, and over here, this is Miss Stella Patchwork. Stella lived right across the street, so we sit out on the porch and talk to each other across the road. You know, so Stella, oh my God, she's a master. She's a master quilt. She's in her 70s and moved like she's in her 40s. And I mean, she take care of people. She's been taking care of people. And those are her quilts. Some of them are actually in Macy's. So if you go to Macy's, you can order some of the replica of it. And Stella was quilting back there with my mother. You know, now she could probably go on that hill and she would be welcome. Because you know, everybody couldn't quilt with my grandmother. She was really serious about her business. All right, so next slide. So this is 2022. The G's Ben, it was actually the first airing of the quilts. And it was a community hosted event. And actually Soul Grown Deep played a major part in hosting that for us. And it was a success. It was a total success. And we did another one last year. And it's one scheduled for this October as well. So you guys are welcome. You can go on the internet and County Road 29. You know, Friends of the Ben, that's what they call it if you go on, if you want to become a member. All right, next slide. And wow, who's that guy? Yeah, I haven't figured him out yet. Oh, that's me right there. Yeah, that was that, you know, in my yard. So this is the house that I was telling you about, Uncle Stamper. So when they bought those houses during the Roosevelt period, this is what it looked like now. This is about a year ago. This is me talking. And that's that quilt that's supposed to be a pig in the pen. A pole pig in the pen. And I didn't bring these with me because they're still in transit coming from New York. And so I had a lot of people that I talked to about G's Ben and the quilts. So G's Ben is a deep history in quilting. It's a culture of people that live a serene, solitude type life, and just a bunch of good people. You know, you can stop at anybody's house, they won't shoot you. They're like, okay, what do you want? And they'll talk to you for a while. They're gonna give you some directions. You might get lost, but then the next person to help you out. Next slide. And imagine that, remember the lady that I told you that was so quiet? So her style of quilting was what you call the lazy gal. If you see a quilt with a bunch of stripes going up and down like this, they would call that a lazy gal. And if you look it up, the technical term is like a Roman soldier. So Loretta patterns are in the tail of former First Lady Michelle Obama portrait dress. So when you look at that dress is connected to G's Ben. So now you know. So you look at all these different patterns, that look like a pinwheel, don't it? Yeah. For some reason, that pinwheel always get people. And again, that look like a series of pinwheels. And this is those stripes, part of a housetop. I'm surprised they don't have corduroy in it. So, you know, and you can look at that. That's quilt it's called either her way or lazy gal, and sometimes the name's a suspect. You know, so it depends on how the lady that made the quilt felt. Yes, sir.
Are those actual quilted pieces in her skirt, or is that just copying the style?
I don't know.
That is the portrait of,
That's-
portrait they did.
That's the portrait. So I know that they wouldn't be.
No, like it's a painting.
Yeah, this is her painting, but this is the portrait. This is the dress that was made for her, and it actually made off of the copies of the quilts. Some of the fabric and the designs of the quilt. That's the best answer I can give you without telling you a lie. Yes,
There
ma'am.
was a dress designer in New York.
Right.
His name is Willie. And that dress, as well as several other versions, and I'm assuming that that was printed as opposed to having somebody make like a quilt and then put on it.
Yes.
And it was used several times, Viola, what's her name?
Yeah.
She was in a sequel, like President's Wives, and she wore a dress like that.
Good deal. So we appreciate you, ma'am. All right. So next slide. Bam. That's it. Any questions about G's Ben? Thank you guys for allowing me to, share a tiny part of G's Ben with you. Excuse me.
So that was excellent.
Excellent.
Tell us a little bit about the military history.
A little bit about the Army. So, me and the Army. Oh, man. So, well, what happened was, so then, 1979, I was hanging out down in Mobile, Alabama. I had left G's Bend. I was hanging out with a guy named Gene Pettaway, and he was a prankster. So Gene and I was I kind of took the day off. I was supposed to be at work. So Gene said, let's go downtown, man. I was like, okay, we did. And we were doing some things that I'm not going to talk about, but it's kind of mind-altering. So Gene said, hey, man, let's walk into the recruiting station and join the Army. I was like, oh, okay. So me and Gene, God bless his heart, rest in peace, bro. He's dead. Anyway, so I walked into the recruiting station. I'm like, hey, man, this dude can't do this. I said, I tell you what, man. I'm talking to the recruiter. I don't know if he was real sorry or not. I said, hey, man, if you can get me out of Mobile in 6 months, I'll join the Army. He said, what? I don't know. I'm just from G's Bend down the country. So we go in. I'm there for about 30 minutes. So I go back out, and I talk to Gene. He started laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing about, man? He said, man, I didn't talk to a recruiter. I'm like, well, I did. And I took a test. He said, you took a test? I said, yeah. So I forgot about it. And about 2 or 3 months later, somebody knocked on the door. Like, okay. I see this dude in the uniform. I'm like, oh, shit. And he said, I'm looking for Willie Pettaway. Really? What do you want? He took a test. I was like, he did? Like, oh, okay. That's me. He said, you got some time I want to talk to you? I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Why not? I ain't doing nothing. So then, long story short, went down and took another test. Didn't think I was going to pass. And so he come back to the house. I'm like, all right, this dude is back again. It's like, oh, okay. So he said, you still want to leave in 6 months? I said, you can get me out of the country in 6 months? He said, yeah. Come on now. He said, what do you want to do? Like, you can't do this. I said, I want to drive trucks, because I'm thinking the Army don't have real truck drivers. So he said, you want to be a truck driver? You can get this job. I said, I want to be a truck driver. He said, sure, I got you. A couple of months later, I ended up at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri in basic training. And from there, went to Europe. Then I went from there to Texas. Went from Texas to the desert, from back there to Europe again, from back there again. And long story short, did a lot of things in the military, appreciated. And I met a beautiful woman there, met my wife there. We got married, stayed married for 38 years, raised a family, and God bless the soldiers, the airmen, and the Marines that are still on active duty. My hats are off to them. Their challenges are hard, deep, and long. But I took the advice of my uncle, who was in Vietnam. May you rest in peace, Brother Levi, Uncle Levi. And he was in Vietnam. And he told me, whatever I did, do not go infantry. And I didn't. So don't go infantry. So I drove trucks. I did administrative work. I was a master fitness trainer. I was an operation guy. I was a test control guy. I was a computer guy. I was a gopher. Go for this, go for that, go for that. So whatever they needed me to do, I did. And I actually did it with honors. And ran into a situation where my oldest brother had an accident in 1994. And at the time, they wanted to send me to Bosnia, and my job was overstrength. And he said, well, one of my buddies just happened to be at the Pentagon. Called him up. He said, man, I got an option for you. You can take an early retirement, and you can go home, or you can go to Europe again without your family. And I said, that's a divorce. I ain't trying to get divorced. So I went back to the house, told my wife that I was gonna put in to get out of the Army. And so nine months later, I was working for a place called Honeywell. Then I went back to work for the Army again. And all in total, I worked for the Army for about 35 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your service.
You're welcome, sir. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Peace and good afternoon, everybody. I am a latecomer. I traveled long from Warner Robins, Georgia. Was on all these many roadways for hours trying to get along.
Welcome. We're glad you made it.
I originally learned about G's Ben and went to the fantastic exhibit at the Whitney Museum in New York City
Oh,
in 2005. I am not a quilter, but I am a quilting devotee.
ooh, all right. Not a diva, right?
All things quilting. I will be organizing a womanhood, sisterhood, friendshiphood trip to the G's Ben quilt airing of the quilts on Saturday, October 3rd. So I was just chomping at the bit to get here for us to eyeball each other.
Yes, ma'am. So you trying to say you want to talk to me later?
I have also made a tentative reservation. I'm not sure how many sisters will be joining us yet, but I'm hoping my dear sister friend who lives up here in the metro area will find it not robbery to join us. So I want to just talk to you about some details when we finish.
The Army would say, who or Roger got it, ma'am?
Hi, my name is Leonora Mims, and I'm a STEM teacher, and I am from Ithaca, New York, where Cornell University is. And I have the pleasure of being a teaching artist November 6th at the Herbert F. Johnson Museum. One of the things they have there is a G's Ben quilt. So I will be talking about that quilt, and I'm so glad to be here because one of the things that I do, and I teach marginalized students, and I give them access to math, but I do it through quilting. So they're going to be having teachers there who want to get STEM licenses, which I do as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I'm so glad to be here, and I would love to talk to you a little bit because I want my class to be a great class.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So that's two.
Yeah.
So,
Everything was really, really great, but to respect the time, if it's a short, quick question, that's great, because we'll never get all our questions answered. And then in addition to that, we'll give you a chance to get, I don't know if you want some water, we will get you some water. You got some? Okay.
yes, ma'am.
And then there are refreshments outside, and then also you want to look at the quilts. I would say don't touch them because they're very fragile. But, you know, I can never hear enough. So, but we need to respect your time. So let's take one more question. And I know you had your hand up.
Just a quick question. In terms of the generations that are continuing, how young? Do you see younger? I mean, are there, and when I say young, I mean, like, do you see people like in their 20s, or they're younger, or they're 50? You know what I'm saying? So that it, in terms of long-term longevity of keeping this history, this art and this craft and history alive.
I think we're going to be okay.
Okay.
Yes, that's the short answer, because quick answer with a little bit more to that. During Juneteenth, the Quilting Bee Museum in County Road 29, that's what they call themselves, right off County Road 29. They host kids throughout the community. They have them there, and they put on quilting demonstration. I usually go down there and donate some time and stuff, and do what I can for them. And there's a generation of quilters now that's roughly my age and a few younger that are keeping the tradition alive. I think we're gonna be okay. And we're good? Everybody good?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you guys for having me.